Listen, what we need to do in the state of Alabama is we must put people back to work. That's the number one issue in the state of Alabama because our budget is funded with growth taxes, 54% income tax, 26% sales tax, 4% use tax. If people are not working, we cannot fund the education budget. So we must put people back to work. Now, other than that, what do we need to do? Number one is I do think that we need to budget differently than the way we budget right now. Now, I understand that AEA has been opposed to the 15-year rolling average budget, but I'm for that because I think that smooths out the ups and the downs. We have to get health care costs under control. Right now, almost $1 billion of the health care costs in this state is PHIP. We must get that under control. And we don't know what's going to happen with this national health care, but if we had not done that, we need to put our teachers and state employees on health savings accounts, which would give them a raise, but it would also keep down the increased cost. We need to give local flexibility to local school systems, putting more money into OCE. We also need to, and we're trying to do this, we need to finance the teacher's retirement on a 30-year basis rather than on a 20-year basis. We can save almost $60 million by doing that.
Thank you, Doc.
I listened to 4.5 hours of testimony on charter schools this past year in Montgomery. I was not convinced by the testimony at that hearing that charter schools were any better than public schools. And having said that, I am not opposed to trying things new. I have never been opposed to that. My solution was this. I suggested that we actually have a pilot program in the state of Alabama and select a limited number of charter schools, half being technical schools, the other half being charter schools. And I set a limit of 10 schools. That's what I said. As a conservative, I believe that you should look at something in a state before you jump into it and see whether or not it works. And I personally was not convinced by the testimony that they work that well. Now, having said that, I am not opposed to innovation, and I have never said that I was opposed to at least trying them on a pilot program basis. However, what we tried to do this last year by putting charter schools in, we looked at the race to the top money. The race to the top money was nothing in the world but bailout money from the federal government that had strings attached that had nothing to do with charter schools. This money was to work for in-service centers in colleges. It had nothing to do with charter schools. I personally was opposed to that. I'm opposed to federal dollars that are given to us that says you have to change your rules and regulations in order to get this money. And that's why I was opposed to that race to the top money. You know, I guess I have been called the AEA lackey simply because I have voted for teacher pay raises. When we have the money, I won't do it again. You know what? When you go to Montgomery, you realize this. If you give up, like I did, a third of my time serving my patients in Tuscaloosa that I love, I gave up a third of my time, and I gave up a third of my income to go to Montgomery to serve. No one tells me how to vote. And that includes AEA. No one tells me how to vote. And as governor, I will not be the governor of special interests. The only interests that are special to me will be you, the people of Alabama. And I can tell you, I support public education. I grew up in public education. I owe a lot to my teachers. Let me tell you, I ain't going to work with AEA. I'm going to work with whoever's down there. You cannot go into Montgomery and butt heads with people and say that you're not going to work with them. You have to work, you have to play with the cards yourself. And so you work with whoever's down there. Democrat, Republican, AEA, Alpha, all these others. You have to realize that many of these people have special interests. But my interest as a legislator and my interest as governor is the interest of the children and the people of the state of Alabama. No one has ever told me how to vote. Now, it seems as if I have voted with AEA a lot, and I have because I have a lot of respect for teachers, and I have respect for public education, and as I said before, I'm going to do it again. But thank you for that question. A governor will have to understand Medicaid. He or she, well, there's no she's here, so he will have to also understand the budgetary process, and especially the general fund. I have more experience than anyone up here dealing with the budgets. In 4 years, this bill that was passed by the federal government is going to say that if you're below 133% of the poverty line, then you will be on Medicaid. We have to match Medicaid. Now, what they did is, if you remember the corn husker kickbacks and all these things that we're talking about over the last year, well, what they did is they equalized it across the United States, and they gave every state 4 years of Medicaid funding. But after those 4 years are gone, the states will have to pick up that difference. It's been estimated that $95 million a year will go on the states as far as having to pick that up. At the present time, our general fund budget is $1.6 billion, and we don't have enough money to fund Medicaid, and we have to fund Medicaid. Medicaid is the underpinning of every hospital in the state of Alabama. And if we don't fund Medicaid, hospitals are going to go under. And you're not going to have a place to go when you have to go to the hospital. You need a governor who understands budgets and understands the Medicaid and understands also this bill that has been passed by the federal government, some of which I believe is unconstitutional. And I truly believe that it will be taken before the courts, and some of it is unconstitutional. Not all of it, but some of it. And so you need someone who understands that, because that's going to be very important over the next 4 years. First, let me say thank you for having us tonight. It's a good, eclectic crowd. My mother went to the 8th grade in school. My dad went to the 7th grade. He never made more than $3,000 a year in his entire life. I have more education than anybody on this stage right here today. Do you know where he started? He started in Columbiana, Alabama, in the elementary school, and then in the high school, because I had great teachers. That's where it all started. Education is important. People ask me why I vote for teachers, because I love teachers. I appreciate what teachers did in my life, and I'm going to continue to support teachers. In fact, when I'm governor, or when I run for governor, which I'm doing now, I want every teacher. I want every custodian. I want everybody that works in the lunchroom. I want every bus driver. I want everybody that works around the grounds, around the school. I want every one of you to vote for me. And let me tell you, I'm applying for a job just like the rest of these guys up here are. You're all applying for the same job. You've got to make a decision who's going to get that job. Now, why should you elect me? Number one, I have more experience dealing with budgets as far as education and general fund budgets than anybody on this stage. Number two, I have ideas. I had an idea this year about putting people back to work, and we were able to author and pass the Reemployment Act of 2010, which will put at least 6,000 people back to work. We were able to get that through the legislature. The governor signed it this last week. And you know how we were able to get it through the legislature? It's because even though I am a Republican, and I've been a Republican all my life, I know that you have to work across party lines to get anything accomplished. And I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to work with Republicans, I'm going to work with Democrats, and I am going to move this state forward as your next governor. Because we have some serious problems in this state. This is a serious job that we're applying for. If we don't have the money, you need to know what is going to have to be cut. But we must protect the things that are important in this state. And one of the things that are important in this state are our children. And our children need to be educated. I'm asking you to support me as your next governor for the state of Alabama. Thank you.